Bilinguals of Reddit, what's your funniest story of people not knowing you speak their language? Most people don't realize that I speak Spanish fluently. I was in Mexico with my husband on vacation. We went to a restaurant. They gave us a menu with a side in English facing up. I flipped it over, and the exact same menu was printed on the back in Spanish, except the prices were about half that of the English version. I ordered our meals in Spanish just in case it counted towards the discount. I was shopping, and two people approached me and asked if the store had ice cream packages in English. I guided them to it, as I was heading there myself. Once they got it, they instantly started talking Swedish, extremely poorly. Swedish is my native language, and said how impolite I had been for not simply telling them, and had felt like I was forced to lead them there. I replied, in Swedish, I was heading here myself. So why the hell would I simply tell you where it is? Both turned pale, grabbed the ice cream and hurried off. And yes, this was in Sweden. There's literally no reason for them to assume I'd not speak Swedish. My friend's son knows fluent Spanish, but is white, so when he brought his wife's minivan in to get it detailed, the people cleaning it were all going on and on about how stupid and dirty this guy is and how he should make his kids clean the van instead. Then they went on about how cheap Americans are and they probably wouldn't even get a tip for all the hard work. When they were done, he went right over to thank them and let them know how much he appreciated the job they did and gave them a tip. All in Spanish, so they knew he had heard every word they said. Edit. I probably should have mentioned that this was in Mexico right near the US border, so being white and a Spanish speaker was more unusual. My wife, Norwegian, speaks 6-7-11 languages at varying levels of proficiency, and have a few good stories. Best ones from her time studying in Prague. She went out with some Czech friends, all girls. They ended up in a bar, at a table next to a group of Norwegian guys that were on a weekend party trip. The guys were somewhat drunk, and of course immediately started flirting with my wife and her friends, in the typical heavily accented English spoken by Norwegians. While flirting, they discussed among themselves the various physical attributes of each girl, how slutty they were, how they'd perform in bed, what they'd do to them later that night in graphical detail. I'm so getting laid comments, and so on. My wife translated everything into Czech for her friends. A lot of fun was had at both tables. The Czechs got more and more flirty as the Norwegians bought drinks, got bolder and became more and more certain they'd all actually get laid. After several hours, when the girls decided rather abruptly to end the evening, the Norwegian guys were a bit confused, as the girls all got so cold so quickly. Then my wife said, in Norwegian, nice meeting you guys. Good luck. Watched them all turn blood red, and left. Kind of the other way. When I was younger, my family and I, German, went to Greece, and in a store, my grandpa started talking about how expensive that stuff there was, and how cheap it looked. Then my mom found something she liked, and the store owner came over to help her, in German. Spanish speaker here. Was with my family ordering food at a Mexican restaurant, and the waiter in training was telling his senior that he was worried that his English wasn't good enough and he wasn't ready to try. I told him not to worry. I spoke Spanish and would help translate for my monolingual mother. He got excited and thanked me. I ended up chatting with him for a while and told him to not get discouraged. If I could learn Spanish in Mexico, he could learn English in the US and people would be more willing to help than he might think. Some Japanese cashiers had a conversation deciding if my wife's red hair was natural. As we walked away, I told them it was dyed, but not to tell my wife that I know. I'm not bilingual, but can understand quite a bit of Spanish and speak a limited amount. I was at a quinceañera with a friend and was having a really bad anxiety day. One of the middle-aged men sitting at the same table as us was outright talking about me in Spanish, saying I had crazy eyes and how there was something wrong with me. My friend told him I could understand him, and he just went quiet. Was at the theater waiting for the play to begin in my city, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and those teenage girls next to us were making fun of everyone around them, in French. I was quiet until they started to talk about my mother. They were talking about nothing much, just her general appearance, but in an unflattering way. My mom speaks no French, but I do. A broken French, but I do. She got really confused when I turned to her and said, loud and clear, sets files croy and QUI person lissa comprise canards, which means these girls believe that no one can understand them. Idiots. They went blue, purple, red. They were not French, but they were smartasses who thought they were the only people in Sao Paulo that spoke French. And nobody messes with my mama. Opposite of topic, I'm by no means a fluent ASL signer. But once my local bar tried to introduce me to a deaf old man, I started with a simple "How are you?" nothing in response. I figured he didn't want to talk. I simply signed, "Have a nice night," absolutely nothing in response. Come to find out, dude is not deaf. Doesn't know a leg of sign. Just does it to get attention and drinks. Schmuck. My boyfriend and I went to Japan and stood out like the pair of hugely tall white folk we are. Literally no one expects foreigners to speak Japanese here BTW. When just hanging out waiting to cross a street, a kid holding his mum's hand just stared at my 6-foot+ boyfriend and said to his mum, "Wow, foreigners are amazing, aren't they?" We nearly died of laughter later, but there are tons of encounters like this. I only scare the pants off some of them though. Great fun. I'm Norwegian, but was in vacation in London. Was on the way out the subway and waiting for a lift, standing with my girlfriend. We overhear two girls behind me talking about me in Swedish that I understood and how hot I was and that they would definitely be down to fuck if I asked, and how my girlfriend was not in my league and that I did not know how hot I was. When the lift arrived, I turned around and thanked them in Norwegian for the compliments, but that my girlfriend was far better looking than both of them. They decide to not get on the lift with us. I'm a white as they come American from the Midwest. I absolutely do not look like I speak any languages besides English. You know, the stereotypical stupid American who thinks if I just speak English really slowly and loudly everyone will suddenly understand me. But I've actually studied quite a few languages, including Chinese, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, French, Spanish, German and Italian. But again, I really don't look like I understand any of them. I found the best thing to do is to keep a vacant expression on my face whenever people are talking around me, like I don't have a clue what's being said. One time I was in Seoul, just sitting outside relaxing. I had about 15 minutes before I had to go back inside and keep working, and I was just enjoying the day. There were several Korean men standing around not too far from me, smoking, laughing and talking, so I started listening in. They were talking about the fat, stupid American man sitting near them. Lots of insults and making fun of my character, intelligence and looks. I didn't let on that I understood a word of what they were saying. I just sat there minding my own business, and if any of them looked at me, I just smiled at them. When it was time for me to go back inside to work, I walked past the man, in Korean. Told them that not all Americans were as stupid as they seemed to think. The look on their faces when they learned I had been listening to everything they were saying about me was one that still makes me smile when I remember it. I mean, I live in Canada, and I'm half French Canadian, so lots, but the best was kinda the reverse. My dad yelled out to me in the middle of a crowded grocery store that he was bleeding from my asshole and have to go to the bathroom in French, thinking no one would understand. Like, 3 people turned around with horrified WTF faces as he walked away. I just shrugged. What can you do? Guy has hemorrhoids and no sense of shame. Not my fault. Now we all have to live with this image. I speak quite a bit of Polish, and recently we got these twins from Poland coming to the high school I work at. When they first joined, everyone was fascinated by them and how kind they were. The girls were basically pouncing on them. Then one day, while I was in the lunch hall, they sat with some girls at the table I was sitting at. Just before I got up to go and put my lunch tray in the kitchen, I hear one of them whisper "Brasitkadzukzina" to the other one, "Ugly girl," and when the girl asked what he said, he told her that he'd been saying how beautiful she was. Of course, I was very mad. He'd called this girl ugly, then lied straight to her face. Now I'm just waiting for the perfect time to attack. Kind of along similar lines. I have a friend from Egypt. She and a friend were being driven to the bank by her friend's friend, who she didn't know. The driver then starts going on a tirade about Arabs and Muslims being terrorists and destroying the world to her, and she just nodded along like she agreed. When she left the car, she said, "Oh, by the way, I'm Arab from Egypt." She said she's never seen someone so horrified, and that all he managed to get out was that he thought she was Hispanic. I speak French. Being in Paris was wild. As an American, it felt like I had these experiences on a daily basis. People just assumed I was a moron and couldn't possibly speak French or understand them. The worst one was when the friend I was visiting brought me to a party, and after what I thought was a really boring convo in poor English with the host, at this point I just went with whatever language someone started speaking to me. My friend came over and the host started telling him, in French, that I seemed really uncool and stupid. And so I was like, "Look, your English sucks," which was true. Anyway, she tried apologizing, and this clearly made me like cooler. I dunno. It was really pretty snotty and there was really no recovering from that for either one of us, so I left. Yeah, the worst part is that I'm French American / French Canadian, so I'm just like, word. Worst mother culture ever. Mine is more wholesome. I worked at a department store and this one shift I encountered a sweet but confused old man with a strong French accent trying to ask me a question in English. I just asked if it would be easier for me to speak French. In French, of course. And he smiled very wide. Most people in our area only speak English, so he was glad someone was able to help him in his native language. My best girlfriend was a Spanish language major in high school. She and I used to live to go out to eat, especially Mexican. One night she, fiery attractive redhead, and I, think Fiona from Shrek, went out to dinner. The waiters nearby were discussing why such a beautiful lady was with a whale, and commented on how I ate slower than a turtle. In traditional Hispanic fashion, she slowly reached down, snatched off her sandal, and threw it at them with good force and aim. When they looked up, surprised, she told them off, in Espanol, for behaving so badly. They were so shocked our meal got camped and nothing about La Chancla was said. I'm bilingual, but this story is of my grandma's. When she had first arrived in Toronto, she had made a couple of friends in the area and they had decided to go watch a Bollywood movie together. They went to the nearby theater and were in line when one of my grandma's friends noticed an Asian family, Chinese, Japanese, etc., and started making small little comments toward the friends group like, "What the hell are they doing here? They don't even understand blah blah." The movie ends, and when they're leaving, my grandma's friend made one more comment toward the Asian family, and the guy turned around and said, "Fuck you and your family, bitch. I know your language and I've been listening since you walked in." My grandma's friend left the theater and learned her lesson. I'm a nurse and used to work at Overhear in Costa Rica. So one day this dehydrated American girl came to the hospital. She only speaks English and I was about to put her in fourth. I was getting ready and she told her friend, "I hope this guy gets my vein right, because in America I got this nurse that failed it like 3 times." And I was like, "Shouldn't you be professional?" I was nervous to fail obviously, but I get it right at first attempt and told her I was very nervous of not getting your vein right. I hope you think now I'm professional enough. She was so embarrassed. You should see the expression in her face when she realized I understood everything she said. Then she got better quickly and went home with a funny story.